Hey, so the theme of whether or not you have to actually do anything in 3D to get what you want from your imaginal act and all that stuff continues to be a hotly debated theme every time I open my mouth. And I wanted to make a quick point about that. This video is going to be short. Probably. Maybe not. But, you know, Neville started his whole thing by having people do the ladder experiment. He would tell people that came to his lecture, I don't know the exact story about how this all came about. I'm sure in his later lectures he didn't do this anymore, but basically Neville told people to go to sleep for the next week or 2 weeks or whatever it was, however many days, maybe it was only 3 days. Go to sleep imagining yourself climbing a ladder. Imagine it fully. Feel the rungs in your hands. Feel the muscles in your legs moving up the ladder. You're there. You're climbing the ladder. Fall asleep like that. If you find yourself climbing a ladder in the next whatever period of time, come back to my lecture next time. If you don't come back. Okay? And I think a lot of people take this as sort of like sometimes people, it doesn't work or something like that. When really the whole point of what Neville was doing with that was telling people, if you're not going to do the thing, don't bother coming to the lecture. Because everybody who did it fully experienced it. It's a law, right? This subconscious mind outpicturing this thing, which for something like climbing a ladder, unless you fell off a ladder at some point in your life and you had some, crazy reaction to the idea of climbing a ladder, for most people, that doing that is a great demonstration of how the things that you think about and feel as real tend to just happen. They just show up. So the people that didn't come back to Neville's lecture didn't do this thing and then it didn't show up in their reality. They either didn't do it correctly or much more likely didn't do it at all. And that was the whole point of that. So the people that came back had the demonstration. They demonstrated to Neville that they were worth talking to. They were worth lecturing to because they were willing to actually do the thing. Or if they didn't actually get it to happen, they at least were, they had enough drive to come back and continue to see what the deal was. It wasn't about, that's what it was for. It was to weed out the people who didn't even have the drive enough or the discipline enough to do the thing that they had to do to demonstrate the whole point. So I've been talking about this a lot with people, like my real life people. And, the consensus is really, I think, just that, Neville was coming from a different time. He was lecturing in the 30s, 40s, 50s, early 60s. And at the time that Neville was lecturing, I don't know how to put this exactly. The idea that you wouldn't do anything to help yourself out in life was not a thing. That's a thing now. That's a rampant thing now, where, people don't want to do anything. And it's like, there's like a whole anti-work subreddit and with thousands and thousands and thousands of people on it. And, back in that day, you went, if somebody asked you, or do you go to church? You'd be like, of course I go to church. How dare you ask me that question? The idea that a man, at the time, because women weren't it wasn't the way it is now. The idea that, a man would not be willing to go to work and work hard to get something he wanted just meant he was a bum. So you have to look at a lot of stuff that Neville wrote and said from the vantage point he was coming at the time. That's why the stuff you read today, written in the last 20, 30 years, makes it very clear. And even Wallace Wattles even has a whole chapter on action in his book, The Science of Getting Rich, because I don't know, maybe he was sensing human nature even in 1910, or maybe things were different in 1910. But, that's why there's a lot of emphasis on you still have to do something, because people take this stuff and they misconstrue it to mean that they should just sit there imagining. And that then, when they're done imagining, and they go about their daily lives to do everything in their daily lives exactly the same way they've always done it. That is not what that means. And no, you don't always have to take action to get something. I'll use myself as an example again. I manifested my partner intentionally, without lifting a finger, intentionally to do it. I did not put myself on a dating site. I did not go out and sit in public with like, like a classic novel in front of me, open, with a bookmark, just kind of looking around. I didn't do any of that shit. I didn't do anything. All I did was make this YouTube channel and continue to be kind of obsessed with all the stuff in this genre, literature wise, and really like evaluating everything. I was really into that. That's all I did. I just did that. And he showed up. I didn't have to do anything because I was already the person that matched with that. So I didn't have to do anything. If you're not already the person that matches with the thing you want, you will have to become that person. You will have to keep it on your mind. You will have to imagine being that person all the time, especially if it's not what you are now at all. If you're making a major change, you're going to have to do a lot of mental work, imagining, getting that feeling. When that feeling leaves, you got to get it back. You have to stay in that state. And it seems that people think that you just imagine it and then you're in the state and then it just happens. And that's what Neville's saying. Because, he did everybody a grave disservice by referencing things like what I just said about manifesting my partner as being effortless. Because from a certain frame of mind for certain things, it is effortless, or there's very little effort. But, he then goes on in other books, like The Power of Awareness. That whole book is about your self-concept and about how you have to be a different person. And this shit is all right there, but people gloss over that for this idea of this fantasy of this easy transition from, having lived your whole life in the mentality of being poor to living your life in the mentality of there's abundance everywhere. That's a major change. And if you're right at the beginning of that, this idea that you're going to imagine having money, you don't even know what that's like. You don't even know what that would feel like. So, it's a long process for some things like that requires a lot of effort. Things that are worth getting are worth doing this for. They don't just come. You might get the subconscious to manifest a lottery win, but what are you going to do with that if you weren't in the mentality of somebody that knows how to handle money like that mentally? And I don't mean like, where do I invest this? I mean like, what do I do with this? Like, if I won $1 million right now, it'd be very different from a person, living paycheck to paycheck, getting $1 million. We would feel totally different about that. And the outcome would be very different. So, anyway, that's just to illustrate a point. Hopefully that made sense.